Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Press Break podcast. I'm Chelsea, and obviously I'm joined by Jamie and Tyler, like always, and we are here to talk all things women's basketball, the 365-day sport that just keeps coming up with more and more news. We have a lot to talk about this week. We're going to dive into NCAA news, some big games from over the weekend. Both of these two were actually boots on the ground at games across the country. We're going to talk about some, awards that were given out, some rankings, some great matchups, get into a little bit of an around the NCAA. And then after all that, we're going to dive into a little bit of Unrivaled talk. We haven't really gotten into the Unrivaled Women's Basketball League yet, but that is coming up super soon. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. But we're going to start with women's college basketball, of course. So there was week 2, or I guess week 1. I don't even know where we're at.
Whatever you want to call, it's there's just hoops on all the time now. So
all the time.
Yeah.
So there was a few big games, a few little tournaments that we will get into. Personally, I was watching Michigan, I was watching UConn, and of course there was that big marquee South Carolina versus NC State game, which I know, Tyler, you were at. So give us the rundown. What was happening it was in North Carolina and Charlotte?
Yes, North Carolina and Charlotte.
So give us all of the tea on what was going down in Charlotte, some highlights and what it was like to be there.
No, it was just a really dope setting. Obviously having two teams from the Carolinas. I think South Carolina, it was an hour away from Charlotte, and NC State was closer to 2. But regardless, still, the whole lower bowl was packed out. They had people all up in the top of the stands. So it was just a cool kind of mix. Everyone was wearing red though, so I couldn't. It was that was a little confusing for me. But no, it seemed like a really really that was my first time going to one of these kind of invitational events. I had been to a Final Four before, and it kind of just gave off similar vibes, which is what all the coaches had to say also in their post-game press conferences. Don Staley was super complimentary of it. I mean, really all the coaches, literally every single one of them, and it felt genuine. It seemed like they were the thing that stood out to me was Don Staley said it made it Ally and that ran the event made it feel like everyone's home court, which I thought was a really cool way of putting it. Now, South Carolina probably had the most fans in the building, so I bet it really felt like home court for them. But
they travel.
Yes, they do, and it wasn't a far one. They travel to Paris. They'll travel to Charlotte.
Exactly.
But no, it was just a really dope event, and the game South Carolina NC State was a fun one as well. Obviously, that was kind of the more marquee matchup versus Virginia Tech and Iowa. But I also thought that one was an interesting game too because it's very very different levels of sorts in where these programs are at right now. Virginia Tech and Iowa are in very, very similar boats with new coaches and players leaving and so much production going out the door. So it was cool seeing them kind of figure things out in person. But yeah, obviously the marquee matchup with South Carolina and NC State in that Final Four rematch. And we talked last time about the post play from South Carolina and if that was going to be the formula this season. And obviously it's still early, but the guards from South Carolina showed out. There was no Chloe Kitts in this game. It seemed like kind of a one-game, one-off academic issue is what it was labeled as. Didn't seem like it was going to be anything long-term. But, to touch on the post real quick before I get into the guards, Joyce Edwards, watching her in person, the stats don't pop off the screen, but watching her in person and watching her post up, she posts up, it's in the way that she runs down the court, and she runs down the court. I mean it when I say runs, and she just makes room. And it didn't translate into a ton of points. It didn't translate into a ton of rebounds on the box score. The turnovers were certainly something that they're going to want to get down. But just visually, if you're watching the game, you're like, this is going to be a player. And honestly, I don't know how much of that production is going to come this year. But I have absolute confidence in her going forward, just based on the foundation, the intangibles that are already in place. And obviously, it's not like she's some underrated recruit or anything. No. She's at the top, so it's not any. And none of this is a surprise. But seeing it in person was just really validating to because that was my first time seeing her play in person. I was like, oh, I get it. Like I completely
Seeing people
understand.
in person as opposed to like the stats is so
It's
like
different.
South Carolina,
Yes,
especially because of
100%.
how much balance they have.
Yes, 100%.
And it's also, I feel like this trend of like forwards who are really good in the post but also build out their game to be so versatile is like becoming such a trend in women's basketball, which is like so fantastic, because then you see the vision, which is like Nafisa Collier, and you're like, oh, okay, like I understand. And so I do hope and think that these players are trying to model their games after these like extremely versatile bigs and like forwards, especially, who, you know, can play in the post but also kind of like do everything. And I think Joyce is definitely, like, obviously, like you said, like she needs time. It's like her second or third game.
Right.
But I like, again, like up there with all the freshmen that I'm like, okay, like this is,
you can just tell, like, and I mean, stop me if you've heard this before, if there's a 4 or 5 from South Carolina that's going to be good, but it's like I said, it was impressive seeing it in person, but ultimately the guards is what won them this game. Tahina Paopao, this was some of the best. I was there with Shawnee from No Cap Spaces, we were there with, and she goes at one point, she goes, we got Paopao hero ball, but it was in a good way. Like there was times where South Carolina just needed a bucket. And that's not something that we've seen from Tahina at all times throughout her time in South Carolina, where she is the one that goes and gets the bucket. But she was going and getting the buckets in this one, whether it be spotting up, whether it be driving. It was just a very diverse bucket-getting performance from her, which I thought was super, super dope.
That's why she came back.
Yeah, 100%. And like it's draft season, you know, like this is the draft stock. Like this is the season for her. And putting up 23 points on 10 of 16, 3 of 7 from 3. That's a high draft performance right there against a very good team that has very athletic guards as well that are willing to defend. So that was just very, you know, seeing her do that and kind of actively level up in a way, like right before my eyes, was super dope. And I think she led all scores between both games with that 23. And then my Malaysia for Wiley as well, 8 of 14. I have a gripe.
Okay.
I have a gripe though. And I'm not going to lie. This might just be me being selfish as a viewer. However, I want green light for Wiley. And what I mean by this, and I completely understand the South Carolina system, and I understand why the subs happen so much and everything, but it pains me that she only gets 18 minutes. And it pains me when we see a highlight play. I forget at what point in the game it was, but there was a highlight play or two that were like back-to-back, and then she gets subbed out. And I know it's just the rotation and everything. And like and look, I'm not going to be the one to tell Dawn Staley how to work her subs. Obviously, she knows what she's doing. Which is selfishly as a fan, I just want to see for Wiley hoop. And seeing it in person was incredible. Yeah. And like, so I wanted to see that, but ultimately, the guard play. Also, Raven Johnson only 4 points, but those 2 buckets that she had, I was like, oh. Like, they were a little bit more isolation as well. And like, you're just actively kind of seeing the growth from these guards. And I think part of it may be like they had it the whole time, but it's just different formula, like I kind of kept referring to, you know, and now we're actively seeing it. And I think part of it might also just be just general game growth from them on an individual basis. But ultimately, I left super impressed, and South Carolina did their thing.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great game to watch. It was on TV here, which was fun.
There you go.
But I think like what surprised me most about South Carolina, and it's not like I doubted them coming into the season, because obviously it's still the number 1 ranked team in the country, even still after, you know, the second rankings came out, which we'll get to. But I was just very impressed with how this team so early in the season was able, you know, NC State wasn't, you know, letting up on them.
It was the third quarter. Like it was a close game at halftime, and it was the same thing that kind of happened in the Final Four, where the third quarter it got slippery for NC State.
Exactly. So, you know, they were definitely competitive, and like, you know, another young team could have gone out there and then, you know, just like completely buckled under that pressure in the second half, got tired, any of that stuff. But I do think like having those older players and like Tahina Paopao and the others like will benefit them because they have that experience, but also like, you know, it's nice to see them already have so much chemistry despite losing a huge player in Camila Cardoso, who most of their gameplay was through last season. So I was most impressed by that. And obviously like NC State has always been kind of like a sleeper team for me as well. So I mean, Sanaya Rivers is always going to be like,
okay, you mentioned Sanaya. And one thing I did want to point out is that she had 2 shot attempts at halftime and ends the game with 7. Yeah. And we as No Cat Space had talked to her during the summer, and she had talked about, like she's going to be able to facilitate more this season. Mm-hmm. And I think that is fantastic. I think that is great that she is growing her game in that way. I think that will help her in the pros. However, I need more shots. I think that there was just a time where it felt like there was too much deference, and like she's the best player. Like I say this out of respect and admiration for her game, that we've seen her do more and take more shots. So like going forward, I think there has to be a bit of a balance struck for NC State in that way.
Especially like when, no disrespect, but like when your freshman that's in the rotation takes by far the most shots out of anyone.
Exactly.
Like, that's not bad to have Zam Jones like getting going, but you need other people also looking for stuff. Like to me, it just seemed like at times people were deferring a little bit too much, as you said, like Sanaya deferring a little bit too much. And there was this thing, we talked last year a lot at Iowa State about like, you don't know what you don't know. And so freshmen sometimes just do things because they don't even have it in their head that they should do any different. And that's not at all a bad thing. Like you got to be aggressive. Zam played a solid game, but like some of the other players with more experience need to have more of that mindset and not put it on your young one quite as much, and just take a little bit of that pressure, shoulder it a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's early. Hopefully they kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm more.
That's why you play these,
Yeah, exactly. And it was nice to see them compete with, again, like South Carolina. That Final Four match last year was probably one of my favorite games of the entire year. Like, it was so fun. And I remember like everyone on Twitter was watching it. It was like, I feel like we were having like a family watch party. And that was, so fun to see Tyler out there and doing his thing and getting to watch.
So we've got the 2 straight matchups there covered here because I was at the Final Four.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. We're on a roll. Figure out where they're playing next. We'll be there.
Yeah, and absolutely. Then Jamie, of course, was in Iowa State doing her thing on the radio as always, being cool. I was listening, being like, I know her. That's why.
Oh my gosh.
Addie Brown keeps doing the thing.
Addie Brown, bro.
Like, not to set it up, but Addie Brown keeps doing the thing, and I need people talking about it.
It was very vindicating to like see her start out really strong like she has. Obviously like we know her name, we know her game, and we've already discussed kind of how wild it is that's not super commonplace. I think I mentioned, I don't remember if it had come out on here yet, but like The Athletic named her as their breakout player of the year. So obviously very much appreciate that like people that know ball know her name. But it's about, especially with the growth of the game, getting outside of that. And so especially when you have a very much like a big 3 on a team in Audie Crooks and Emily Ryan, where they're on most of the national award watch list, things like that. And then, you also have Addie Brown. Well, to me, that's the dream, to have someone like her going under the radar.
That's your player? Come on.
You kidding me? And so she started out terrific, moving more to like the power forward position, and has shown that she really worked hard in the post this summer, really worked hard defensively, doesn't have to facilitate quite as much as like that point forward because there's more guard depth, but she's capable when she does it. Her and Audie, we're talking like potential for one of the best duos you're going to find anywhere, anytime. They love each other. Like, it's so fun to watch them play together. And so that unselfishness is really impressive. She's 1 rebound shy of having averaging a double-double through the first 3 games. And so certainly a strong start there. But Iowa State hasn't faced like a ton of super high-level competition quite yet. That'll be another week or so out probably. St. Thomas, not bad at all, but gonna be taking it a little bit slower here after 3 games week 1. But then I was watching stuff all over. I was getting excited with news coming out. Like Tyler, you were talking about being over at the Ally Tipoff. Like news came out that there's gonna be a game over in Germany to kick off the season next year, which I'm like,
really? I didn't even see that.
So ESPN is hosting Louisville and UConn playing at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. And so that's gonna be super, super cool. I minored in German And yeah, so like
boots on the ground.
Yeah. So like I'm like, bro, let's get it rolling. But it's like a constant battle to not lose all of the ability I had in the language, and so I'm like, maybe that'll be my new aspiration. That'll be my motivation.
You got a year of Duolingo on deck.
So yeah, I started listening to German music again and stuff just to get the language in my ears. German punk goes kind of hard. I ain't gonna lie. So
can't say I know.
But between that and like we have the We Play Paris Tip-Off that's now been 2 years. And I mean, you just have these really cool marquee events to start out the season. We're gonna talk about more coming up here in the next couple of weeks when you get into Thanksgiving events and then even into December. Like, we'll get plenty of South Carolina coverage because Thanksgiving Iowa State plays them, and then getting into December, like I said, you've got like the Hoop Hall, the Invesco QQQ Classic out at Mohegan Sun. That's going to be Iowa State and UConn, and then LSU and Seton Hall. So like, I just think that it's awesome that women's basketball is seeing a lot more of these like opportunities, not just to have good non-conference games, but to make it a real event and people are really showing up for it, especially to make most of them double headers so that you get 4 different fan bases and people really show up for both matchups. I just think that that's like the best way to grow things. Yeah, absolutely. Like
Toronto.
It should be, no, I mean, that should be the most natural thing in the world. That should be the easiest sell ever. And so perhaps for like, you know, the W getting kicked off up there, maybe that would be a really good reason to do it. So I mean, last
year UConn came for like an Aaliyah Edwards home game, and they came for Kia as well. And like last year, like I was at the Aaliyah Edwards game last year, and it was packed. Like they sold out. Yeah.
I wasn't there, but Iowa State did the same thing. Did an exhibition for Bridget Carlton her senior year up there. Yeah.
Exactly. So
I mean. Yeah, movers and shakers, if you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening, Toronto will come out for women's college basketball. Like, we got fan base up here, especially with the WNBA coming.
Like, if you're going overseas, if you're going to Paris, if you're going to Germany.
Come to Toronto.
It's a little shorter flight.
Like, bring a Michigan game here. Like, let's go.
Right.
That's the easy one.
That's the easy one.
That should be announced, like, next week.
Yeah.
Michigan versus Duke, I would.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
Anyway, if you're listening, those teams have been giving you ideas for free. So
that's good stuff.
But yeah, it's cool to see that. It also gives the opportunity for these players to like travel and see what it's like to like, you know, just
you need to practice those things. You need to practice traveling. You need to practice playing at neutral sites after a second game. Like that's something that in the past a lot of people haven't faced until like until you know maybe their like conference tournaments is having a game right prior to them.
Exactly. I feel like it's good not only for them facing these teams but also putting themselves in these situations, traveling, having to balance all of that, because then the tournament comes and you were like, okay, I've already been to all of these different tournaments and whatever, and I'm used to it. And it's, you know, it's good that more of them are being put on TV, and, you know, hopefully we get, again, like we're going to Europe, let's come to Canada, let's go to South America, let's do, you know, a bunch of things, because especially because there's so many more international players, like I feel like it would be super fun. And it's always fun when these players get to go to their home. Like every Canadian exhibition that I've been to where a player gets to like come play where they don't usually get to play in their home country is really cool. And I feel like the American players don't always understand that because that's just normal for them to be able to play in their own country. So yeah, I feel like it's cool. And then people just like come out and support. Like when you have someone from your country coming, it's great. But yeah. Anyway, so that was great. And you know, there was so much, obviously there's like 17 games a day. It feels
there's a lot.
But we had some great ranked games this weekend or over this week. I know one that you guys wanted to talk to was Oregon and Baylor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
That was a big upset. Tyler, you got to watch that, right?
Yeah. So that was like one of the few games on Sunday that was like, it was so late.
We both watched every minute of it for the same reason.
Yeah. It was so late. I was home from the other games. Hey, man. Oregon has been exercising their demons by the game. Because it's early on, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But last year was really bad. Like there's a lot of demons to exercise from this Oregon program based on last season. Whether like there was no game last season was easy. No game was a given. No game was a guarantee. And you know, you kind of every team kind of goes in early in the season, and not every team, but like generally speaking, you're playing the quote unquote lesser competition, and it's usually a relative breeze. You get your first game out, you get the jitters out, you're good to go. Oregon didn't have any easy games last year in the way that a normal Power 5, now Power 4 team would. And they got those out the way. And then it's like, okay, first win, exhale a little bit. Then you got Baylor coming into town. And me personally, I thought Baylor was a little overranked, but still a ranked team.
Yeah.
Still a ranked team. And still a top 25 Warvey team. And Oregon beat them. And let me tell you right now, Deja Kelly, obviously, we already a solidified name. So it's not like this isn't some coming out party or anything for Deja, but just something feels different with Deja Kelly. And like, I don't know if it's the way she was going attacking the rim. There was one play where she kind of had like a scoop like over a defender like late in the game and split two defenders. And I was like, hold on, I don't recall seeing that. Like that's like it's some kind of a level up. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna Oregon now enters the top 25. I'm still not putting any grand expectations on them or anything, but they have like the biggest eye emojis in the nation right now for me, because I'm just like very intrigued, because this hasn't been a program that has really taken in transfers like this before in the way that they did this offseason. Like that is a bit of a new thing in a way of like just kind of total roster overhaul in this way. Like they've certainly had transfers come in and out, but like nothing incredibly major. And look, it's early, but it's looking solid. It really is. They overcame foul trouble on some players. They they had like Baylor comes back in the game. They hold strong. Like obviously you would love to cruise to a win, but I also don't hate that Baylor came back in and they still held their own, and got to experience that. So I'm intrigued. I got the eye emojis. Deja looks like she's leveled up. Oregon certainly looks better than they did last season. My eyebrows are raised. My eye emojis are placed. I'm intrigued.
It's funny because as usual, we're recording on Tuesday, and as we're talking, I have multiple monitors. I think I'm about to have to add a third one, but on my second monitor right now are two current basketball day games, one of them being Oregon hosting North Texas. And so, I've been sitting here sort of, that's when like my eyes are darting left and right. I'm either looking at stats if I'm looking over here or basketball if I'm looking over here. So a peek behind the curtain, but like, it definitely is a very different vibe. And like, I feel like Oregon had a pretty big transfer class last year as well, but like they also had some freshmen coming in and stuff, and then they had injuries, and that's obviously like what really kind of took them down. But I really am so impressed with their transfer class as a whole, but especially the mid-major transfers. Like I feel like mid-major is kind of the catchphrase for her hoop stats, for one, like between Calvin, all that, but also like it is so important, and like they deserve so much more acknowledgement that they get a lot of the time. Like two absolutely crucial players in that game and to the success of the Ducks over the course of this season are going to be Alexis Whitfield and Elisa Mebius, who Mebius, I mean, she won a medal with Germany 3x3 at the Olympics this summer. Like she's been a defensive stopper. Today, going into the fourth quarter, she hasn't missed a field goal. She's 3 for 3 from the floor. She's made 2 3-pointers. Like she's got 5 rebounds. She's got 2 assists. Like she's doing it all. I was a really big fan of hers when she hit the portal. I was really excited to see where she landed. And then you pick up, Nani Falatia that came out of BYU. You've got Amina Muhammad, who hasn't put together like crazy numbers yet, but I'm a believer in, I am such a believer in her. I love that move. I think it's more like figuring out where exactly she fits with the rest of the pieces, because she's really versatile, but like she's not gonna go super outside of herself, because that's just what happens when you come from Texas, is like you're used to really working within a system. Absolutely. And so I'm intrigued by that. For Baylor, I'm a little worried for them. Jana Van Geitenbeek has been announced as being out for the season. You had Bella Fauntleroy that went out 1 minute into the game, did not return. And so they've got some injuries piling up. You didn't find Aaronette Vonleh for a shot for like the entirety of the first half. Like that's even as I'm sitting here watching North Texas, like North Texas is trying to pound it inside to Tamisha Lampkin, because first of all, duh, as you should, she's terrific. But, like, they know that that's the way to do it. Even when you have someone like Philly Shea, who is really getting back into game form, who is bumping up her minutes, who has been great, especially defensively for Oregon. But, like, you got to figure out a way to get your posts going in any situation. But especially for Baylor, you add Erin at Vonleh, and you don't try to go through her. Like, I thought that was so disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, your two guards total 34 shot attempts, and while Vonleh has 5.
Yeah.
And that's just not, like, obviously, don't get me wrong, like, Walker and Andrews are certainly good guards. So, like, I'm not even, like, mad at them, like, getting, like, leading the team in shot attempts. I'm not even necessarily mad at that. But that balance isn't working for me. And
how are you going to get yourself a good shot if you're not giving it to the post and making people commit there?
Exactly. It was just, everything seemed really difficult. I thought Little Paige Bugs, who I've been, like, Oklahoma's own Little Paige Bugs.
I love her.
I love her game. I'm excited to see her next to Vonleh. I thought she played great, but also, like, you know what this kind of reminds me of? The New York Liberty.
Ooh.
A little bit. And remember when it changed in the playoffs, and, like, it helped. It changed.
Yeah.
My Jonquel Jones to Erin Vonleh right here with the guards. Like, stop me if you've heard this before.
You gotta know.
And stop me. And what happened when that changed? What did they do? They
won a championship.
They won a championship.
Yeah.
But I'm completely with you. Where it was like, there was a lot of time where Vonleh was just out there doing cardio, and that's not what she came here to.
Well, and especially, like, Baylor has been, like, they've done decent on offensive boards, even for, like, being slightly undersized for the past couple of years, and that's not really Vonleh's bag, and so it's like they haven't really figured out, oh no, we need to actually pass her the ball as opposed to just saying, well, clean it up. And then I think the biggest thing to me that was tough was that their first game, not against great competition, but everything ran through Little Paige Bugs, Vonleh, and Fauntleroy, and so I was really optimistic. I was so excited to see that because that's what they need to do, and then they just completely ran away from that against Oregon. So it's
weird because right now it feels like they checked the box in the transfer portal as opposed to knowing what they were going to do with their 5. It's like they're like, all right, we need a center. This center wants to come here.
Well, and
come
she
here.
seemed like she is a perfect fit, like, because
I was
run.
incredibly excited. Yeah,
like,
it makes sense.
To me, she's the perfect fit, but, like, it's about actually, like, putting in the work to implement it as opposed to just saying, well, you're going to be on the floor now, and that's enough.
Yep, I'm telling you, stop me if you've heard this before.
Yep. It's early though, so hopefully they can.
Right, for sure. Like, that's the thing with all these games is, like, we draw conclusions from them and we react to them, but ultimately, a month from now, this could all be completely different.
Oh, for sure.
So, like, that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it.
All the worries that we were having about USC last week, like, give it a month, we'll figure it out.
For sure.
A couple changes in the rankings though. The top 8 stayed the same, so that's fine. But we had 3 new teams. Oregon was one of them, and then a little bit of shifting and stuff. So any big thoughts on the AP poll rankings? And then the AP also had a player of the week, which I know Tyler.
What school she played for?
Oh, Oklahoma.
Okay, noted. Yeah.
So obviously a little bit of personal investment. If you can see Tyler's background.
A little bit. There's a couple of it's got like what is this? That's Courtney Parrish TS 2008 right there. You know, like we got some artifacts in the background.
There you go. So Regan Bears was announced as the AP player of the week. Having a great start for Oklahoma, which is fantastic.
Shooting threes.
Shooting threes.
I talked to her after the game. I was like, that's cool.
I mean, she's in an Oklahoma uniform. That's
what was funny is that because I had talked to her over the summer and she had talked about like being able to play more free and getting to expand her game, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, we'll see you shooting some mid ranges and stuff, taking off the dribble maybe a little bit. Then she came out shooting threes, and she's only made 2 in her career. I think she had attempted like 10 over her first 2 seasons, and she's attempted in each game so far has attempted at least 1, and now has her first make. So she said Jenny told her if she's open, if it feels good, let it fly. So I'm intrigued, but no, she's been great so far, and it's such an interesting thing to see for Oklahoma because they beat Virginia, blow them out like crazy. I was at that game as well, and they didn't shoot the ball well from 3. And in past years, if you're an Oklahoma team and you don't shoot the ball well from 3, normally it's a close game. But you have Regan Beers now scoring 20 plus points, and it just creates such a security blanket for this team that I'm really interested in seeing kind of how
and
it
way
goes.
better defense that started last year as well.
Yes,
like that
100%.
was a huge shift program wide where defense was, I mean, statistically night and day going into last year from the year before, and then it looks like they're continuing this year.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One last question for you two before we move on from college hoops. I'm curious if you have a team that's not currently ranked. So like our listeners can go look at the rankings, see who's up and down. But if you have a team that is currently not ranked that you think could probably crack the rankings at some point. Mine, of course, I'm going to be a homer and say Michigan again. I don't know. I think we've just go blue at this point, I guess. I've decided
you might as well just commit.
I commit, it's fine.
You might as well just commit.
But I do think that they have the potential, especially Silo won, Big Ten Freshman of the Week, Canadian built. Let's go. Had to drop my little Canada tidbit.
There you go. Got to.
So yeah, do you two have a team that you think is kind of like a sleeper you think could kind of break in?
I'll tell you one team, Norfolk State.
There you go.
Be on the lookout. They get the win over Missouri, their first, I think their first Power Four.
Over an SEC.
Over SEC. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have Alabama up next, who is ranked right now. If they're able to pull out that win, then they absolutely should be ranked. So that's just like a game I'm going to kind of have my eye on. But looking at the AP poll right now, like the top two teams, like not that this is like any hot take, Iowa has been a team that I had kind of thought should have and could have been ranked to begin with. I getting to see them in person. It's really interesting now because Iowa just has a different. I keep using the word formula, and obviously I don't know if any team has a more different one than Iowa this season. Like obviously Caitlin going to the W, so they were a defensive focused team, and like Jan Jensen in the post game was like, "Look, the offense is going to kind of figure itself out, but kind of controlling the controllables." They felt that they had more controllables on the defensive side of the ball than they did on the offensive, and like. Virginia Tech is certainly a work in progress. They're not like they lost a ton of stuff as well when it comes, especially on this just getting points on the board with Liz Kitley and Georgia Amore no longer in uniform.
Yep.
But the defense looked really stout, like genuine, like they were physical, they were active. It looked clean. So I was just impressed by them, and they received the most votes like outside of the top 25. So that's not any hot take or anything.
Yeah.
That's just kind of seeing them in person. I was like, this isn't what I expected my takeaway to be from going and seeing them in person. But it was a defensive win for Iowa, and they certainly have offensive firepower still on that team. It's different, but Lucy Olsen and Hannah Stolke can put points on the board. So like I'm just intrigued by them going forward and just kind of as they continue to develop a post Caitlin Clark identity in Iowa.
Yeah, for sure. Jamie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, some teams that I'm kind of watching, Norfolk State as well. I saw them in person last year because they matched up with Stanford round 1 at the NCAA tournament, which was, it got away from them, but the first quarter was 15-12. They really put it on them for, that 10 minutes where they really fought hard and then just kind of ran out of steam. But terrific team. You have a couple of the top mid-major players in the country in Diamond Johnson at the point guard, and then Kira Wheeler inside, and so their potential is so high there. I was irritated because I had noticed that they had Mizzou on their schedule, and I looked at it and I'm like, they're gonna win that. Like, it's not in question in my mind. I didn't really say it anywhere, so I can't claim the credit.
That's
for
the
it,
worst. I hate when that happens.
I did see that. So I thought that was really exciting. And then Illinois now is ranked. They took down Florida State, who was ranked 19th at the time. Shout out Emily Durr, Cyclone graduate on staff there. But they certainly are a team that has the potential, maybe underachieved a little bit last year, but brought a lot back this year. So they're going to be interesting, are in the rankings now. And then the last kind of team that I'm watching, you talk about like eye emojis, and this is a team that you've mentioned, Tyler, is Auburn. They don't even have Talia Scott yet.
Yep.
Like, she's been out. Like, it sounds like it's one of those quote unquote abundance of caution type deals from what people are saying, that she should be playing sooner rather than later. But like, when you look at the projections based on a couple of the different analytics sites that I use, including like her hoop stats, they're overperforming pretty significantly in their first couple games, even though it is against kind of lower competition. Shout out to Deanna Gaston. You talk about Texas transfers. Amina Muhammad at Oregon. Deanna Gaston now is at Auburn. She was great, but she was so underrated at Texas. She found a great spot. She is an excellent fit for the SEC style of play. And then I keep forgetting until I was looking through like their roster and stuff, how insanely good the coaching staff is at Auburn, because Johnny Harris just seems cool. Like, she seems like a great person to work for.
Just good vibes,
or to play for. And then you have a WNBA vet in Fred Williams. So, like, you want to get people prepared to play at the next level, especially if they're maybe a little bit underrated. He knows what that takes. He's been around forever. And then Demetria Buchanan, I was looking at the name. I'm like, okay, I know that name. And I'm looking, oh no, she was in the Big 12 for years and years and years. Like, she was at Kansas. She was at Texas Tech. That's someone who I think is going to be getting some kind of sleeper looks for like young head coaching jobs sooner rather than later. And so Auburn to have the kind of power that they got in the portal, to not even have Scott playing yet, and then to have some of their other pieces coming together. Yep. If Talia's back soon, they definitely have.
I am begging. They got Oregon next Wednesday.
Yes.
Auburn versus Oregon. I need Talia back for that game. I need everyone healthy. Let's just get buckets. I need Deja
whatever
Talia
needs to
going
be
bucket
done.
for bucket. I need it. I need it.
Like, hold her out till then if you got to, but have her ready.
That's fine.
Have her ready, yeah. That's awesome. There's
I love it.
So much to look forward to. Another thing that when you talk about coaching, this made me kind of, because there's a lot of change going on in the W. We talked about that a few episodes ago, but a huge announcement this week from the Unrivaled Women's Basketball League that's launching in January is that they have signed Lynx GM, former, I guess now, Lynx GM, Claire Duellis now as their executive vice president and general manager. And Unrivaled is just rolling out the announcements this week. They now have 32 of their 36 players announced. As we're recording this on Tuesday, Alyssa Thomas and Steph Dolson were both announced today. More announcements coming in the near future. But with the league starting in January, I'll give a quick 10-second elevator pitch if you've never heard of Unrivaled. But it's a domestic league in the United States founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. They're going to be playing 3x3 on a full but smaller court.
Condensed full court,
Yeah, it's like
the term, I think.
Yeah, 3x3, 6 players per team, 6 teams. They're going to have coaches, the whole thing, and it's launching in January. So right now they have 32, still 4 players to be announced. But out of the players that we know of right now, I'm just curious, who you're excited to see play in this new format. They haven't announced who's on the teams yet or what teams people are going to be on yet. I think for me, I'm excited to see Dejanay Carrington bring what she brought from the W. I mean, she had a breakout season. She won most improved. Yeah. I'm not having, why am I having a right now?
Yep.
She did win most improved. I was like, why am I blanking on that? But yeah, and just seeing her in a different format and seeing her, there's players that they've announced that do have 3-on-3 experience that I've watched through the Olympics or whatever. And then players who haven't. So I'm really excited to see. I mean, it's going to be really exciting. There's still a couple of players we don't know yet, but Jamie and Tyler, what are your thoughts on the league? Do you have any people you're looking forward to or any pairs you want to see? And another big thing is that the league is doing a mid-season one-on-one tournament for a huge cash prize. So any thoughts on that as well? Tyler, get us started.
Well, first off, one-on-one, there's nothing I love more than real hoops. And I don't know if it gets realer than one-on-one. So that's going to be super fun.
We're finally going to get the Stewie Asia one-on-one that we all deserve.
Well, if Asia's not in the league, is she?
Yeah, duh.
She's not there yet. You gotta hold on. But you still got four more spots left.
Yeah, no, she has. I don't know why I was just assumed she was already.
Look, that was your dream matchmaking.
I know that was just my brain
I understand.
Saying, yeah,
the real hoops mind took over, but
yeah, exactly.
I think for me, 3x3 is an interesting format, and a lot of it is. Especially, we've seen mostly half court 3-on-3, which is going to be, that'll certainly be different. And I'll be interested in seeing how that goes. But I think just the names that I guess more not necessarily the names, but the archetype of player that I'm interested in seeing in this is the 3-4s that can do a little bit of everything. Satu, Rakia, Dearica Hamby, like those type of players that like
Those
are going to be able to rebound, get the ball and go.
Thrive in 3-on-3. Like if you watch the Olympic tournament, it's all of those like 3-4 players who can facilitate, who can play in the post, and who can shoot. Like that's the players that thrive.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to see that. I think specifically, I guess if I was to pick like one, I'm interested in seeing Rakia's game grow throughout this. I know she had talked about wanting to get better on the defensive end, which is certainly, this will be a test for her where you're just actively playing against some of the best players. Like, I mean, you do it in the W, but like even more so now where it's like even more condensed talent. And
you're going to be actively involved in every moment.
Literally, yes. Yeah. So like, there's no hiding. There's no, not that she was hiding, but like there is no like.
There's no not being a central facet of it, whether that's on you or anyone else.
Yes, you are on the clock at all times, and she had talked about her handle as well, wanting to get tighter. So like on the flip side of that, like you're not gonna really hide the handle either. But see, I'm really interested in watching her face-up game develop in the mid-range and seeing if that is something like we saw it a lot, and like that's where. Like, I don't like comparing to the men's side as much as I possibly can avoid it, but the KD Carmelo aspect of it, where it was just like face up, like mid range, just so fire. I love that's like my favorite, one of my favorite like types of buckets to watch is a mid range Rakia bucket. So I'm just excited to see like how her game grows specifically in this, because I think it will pose a unique challenge for her, and seeing how the aspects that she had already talked about, I think will be challenged in this, and I think that's a great thing for her. So I'm really interested in just seeing the growth of her over the course of Unrivaled.
Yeah, I think it's like interesting to think about because 3-on-3 is like quite different. Like I was really tapped into the Olympic tournament, and doing it differently. Like the Olympic tournament is half court. It's the like traditional 3-on-3 like series kind of play. The like if you're inside, it's 1 point. If you're outside, it's 2 points, and then the foul is. So I'm kind of curious about how they're going to like make their own rules. Basically, they've already announced that it's 7-minute quarters, I think. And you know, they're playing on a full court. So I'm very curious, but it does give some of these younger players who like won't be going to play overseas, it gives them this really unique opportunity to like learn a different style of basketball, which I think will ultimately help them when it comes to playing, you know, the traditional game. So it's really exciting. But Jamie, out of everyone who's been announced, you know, same question. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, especially as you say, like to develop that I talk about the idea of positionless basketball constantly, and so it's kind of a misnomer. It's good and bad in the way people discuss it. But if you want to talk about improving your versatility, which is at its best what that is trying to refer to, 3x3 is an incredible way to do so. And especially to have so many different people. They didn't just go for the kind of player that is going to easily thrive there. Tyler, you know, you were kind of pointing out the people who are built for it the most, but they also have like true post players. They have BG, they have Steph Dolce, who can obviously pull it to the perimeter, but like is more of a post player. They have Aaliyah, and so I mean, all of
Steph
that is great.
has a gold medal in 3-on-3.
Right. Like she's someone who like in theory would not be like the archetype, but she does have like the 3-point shot, and then she has that that kind of versatility to go inside. But what I really am interested in is the people that you would be able to describe most accurately as just like a dog. And by that, I mean like, I think Chelsea Gray, someone who is just, seems to be able to do what needs to be done, whatever that means. Courtney Williams, I think that like, especially Court being a little bit smaller, but she's so scrappy. She just like gets into people in a big way. And she definitely has a lot of fun with like that back and forth, like Marina, you know, those kind of players.
Brittany Sykes would be a good one under
Sykes, yes. And that kind of like where they're going to be around each other so much. They already generally have like, to my knowledge, good relationships with each other and stuff, but like you are gonna have some like really heated rivalries, mostly in good fun, but like that's what makes compelling sports. That's what makes like
the trash talk is the best
fun.
Oh yeah.
And we got some of the best as far as that goes in this league. So like all of that I think is really gonna be exciting. And then the young ones are maybe what I'm most excited for, like Rakia and Angel especially. Angel to be coming back from injury. Yes. So but yeah, that's man, there's so much to be excited for. It's so hard to keep it short because there's just like it's a cool idea.
I'm very intrigued by it just as a whole.
Haven't even said Skylar, please.
Yeah, it's gonna be so
Can she do this? She could be doing this in Unrivaled on their reviews.
That's what I'm curious about with the like rules and stuff. Like, I'm curious if they're gonna have stuff like that. If they're gonna have reviews. If they're gonna have.
I propose.
I want to know who the officials are gonna be.
I want Skylar to actually run the review system. Like, I want every review. Like when she's like, if she's not playing, I want her to be.
I want her to have her own booth, like over top everything else.
Booth, yeah.
It's like you know when they do the Puppy Bowl for the Super Bowl, and they started adding all this insane stuff, and they started adding like birds and little hamsters and whatever. That's Skylar doing the replay system.
Also, like, I think obviously because it's player like founded, I think like the rules and stuff are going to be different, and I think it's going to lead to a lot more like emotion and like passion on the court, which like we always argue is like they don't let them do that in the WNBA, and it's really annoying because it's like they're just trying to like. You know,
it's literally the best. Like that's
it could be an agent of change. Like if you can put together this great of a where you already have this huge TV contract, you haven't even played a second yet. Okay, if you put together something that is actually a compelling product that does deliver on viewership, and you show, hey, you know, you can let a little bit more of the celebration go. You can have, you know, this rule change, that rule change. That's something that like can directly translate and impact the future of like women's basketball across the board.
I mean, if going with the assumption that Unrivaled is just an incredibly successful venture in first season, the way that this changes CBA discussions as well, and just the fact that there is a true stateside alternative with big money attached to it, with a network attached to it, like there's a lot of like, especially depending on who these last couple of players are, like, you know, if they end up getting a Caitlin, if they get in Asia, like these like major stars within the league that still haven't been announced yet, which they already have several. Yeah, this could, and you see even the GM, like having a GM come over and join this from a team that was just in the finals, that has been there for a long time. Like these are active things that are showing like this is poised to be a potential. And I think the goal is to be a partner. I think there's potential to be an alternative, and I don't know how that will impact CBA discussions, but it sure will give the players some extra leverage and executives as well. Honestly, if this is a place they can actually come go to, and like more jobs, which is fantastic, 100%. And like another outlet, especially in North America for these. You know, players.
Well, and you talk about like domestic leagues. If this does well, you have to think that Athletes Unlimited can also parlay it into more opportunities, which gives more stateside leverage.
Certainly
like
hope,
that. I don't think that those have to be like antithetical to each other because they're both pretty limited. So.
And I mean, my like social media / internet network is like mostly women's sports. So like maybe I'm just like this is just like a product of that bias, but like. I don't think I've seen like a underground, like self-made men's league pull up the amount of like sponsorship viewership deals.
Yeah, the only thing that would be close would be like the big three that like Ice Cube.
And even that,
but even that was
getting like current like top
exactly.
players.
It's
because they have plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, right. They don't need.
They don't need.
They don't need.
So that's.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, it tips off January 17th, and they have a huge media rights deal with TNT, which is fantastic. Literally everything that you hear coming out about, you know, the way that they're giving the inaugural players equity, the way that, you know, you're already seeing people go from, you know, executive positions to this league. It's being played in Miami, but I think there's like maybe plans for like the next years to travel a little bit, which is really cool. A ton of investment, and it's made by the players. So again, like, the CBA implications is something I hadn't really thought of, but that's really interesting to think about as we go into this negotiation year. But we've been yapping for a while, so we're going to have to wait for another time to dive more deeply into it. But thank you so much for joining us for, you know, talking women's basketball another week. There's truly, I say this every week, but there's never a dull moment, and we'll be back next Wednesday for you. And have a great week. Thank you for checking out Her Hoop Stats, and make sure to subscribe and check out all of the other podcasts.